Hello everyone, my name is Angelica Christiani dan Gesi Radja, and today I'm honored to present my correlational outline proposal. First is identity. The title of my proposal is The Correlation Between Motivation and Speaking Skill of the 7th grade students of SMP Kristen Anugerah Denpasar in academic year 2026 and 2027. There are two variables in my proposal, in my research. The first is motivation, which is independent variable, and the second is speaking skill, which is dependent variable. Next is chapter 1. In the chapter 1, I will explain about my research background. First is what is or reality or dasein. Brown 2019 stated that speaking is the process of constructing and sharing meaning by using verbal and nonverbal symbols in various contexts. And also Harmer 2001 said that speaking is a skill that requires spatial attention because it is a primary means of expressing ideas and interacting with others. From the two expert opinions, it can be concluded that students' speaking skill are not only influenced by language mastery, but also by learning motivation, which encourage them to actively participate in speaking activity, especially in class. And next is norm or expectations, or solid. The research from Alhamdewi 2022 states that motivation influences student success or failure in learning a language. And motivation is the key to success in speaking English. And the research conducted by Dewi 2022, which the title is The Correlation Between Motivation and Speaking Skill of the 7th grade students of SMP Negeri 2 Mengui in academic year 2021 and 2022. Previous studies show that the result of the correlation between motivation and speaking skill are not always consistent. This may be due to a difference in student background and learning environments. So based on this, the study aims to determine whether there is a significant correlation between motivation and speaking skill of 7th grade students at SMP Kristen Anugerah Denpasar in the 2026 and 2027 academic year. Next is research problem. Based on this background, the research problem can be formulated as follows. Is there a significant correlation between motivation and speaking skill of the 7th grade students at SMP Kristen Anugerah Denpasar in the 2026 and 2027 academic year? And for the objective of this study, is to determine whether there is a significant correlation between motivation and speaking skill of the 7th grade students at SMP Kristen Anugerah Denpasar in the 2026-2027 academic year. Next is chapter 2, Theoretical and Empirical Review. The theoretical review presents several relevant theories that define and explain both variables. First is motivation. The Rainey 2001 in page 2 states that motivation is related to one of the most basic aspects of the human mind, and most teachers and researchers will agree that it has a very important role in determining success or failure in any learning situation. Naiman et al. In 1978, as cited in Pennier 1991, explained that motivation has several important aspects that play a role in achieving learning achievement, namely positive text orientation, ego involvement, need for achievement, high aspiration, goal orientation, perseverance, and tolerance of ambiguity. These aspects are interrelated in encouraging students to participate actively, work hard, and be enthusiastic about continuing to learn. And the second is speaking skill. According to Nunan 2003 in page 48, speaking is the productive oral and oral skill which consists of producing systematic verbal utterance to convey meaning. It means that Speaking is a productive skill that involves the ability to produce systematic utterance to convey meaning. Brown 2019 in page 172 said that there are 5 important aspects of speaking skill, namely pronunciation, grammar, vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension. However, in this study, the researcher only used 3 aspects, namely grammar, vocabulary, and comprehension, to measure students' speaking skill. And next is empirical review. The first research was conducted by Devi in 2022. The research title is The Correlation Between Motivation and Speaking Skill of the 7th grade students of SMP Negeri 2 Mengui in academic year 2021 and 2022. A random sampling method was used by randomly selecting 2 classes from a total population of 165 students through a manual drawing process. The researcher used quantitative research with an ex post facto research design. This research has the advantage of a clear and spatial focus, as well as a detailed design of the research instrument, questionnaire, and scoring rubric. However, there is a disadvantage of this research in the definition of the speaking skill test between making descriptive videos or argumentative monologues, which may affect the validity of the result. And the second research was conducted by Indra Sakti, Ningse, and Kurniawan in 2023. The research title is Correlation Between Students' Motivation and English Speaking Skill in Senior High School. This study used a quantitative research method with a total sample of 36 students. This research has the advantage of a relevant topic, a strong theoretical foundations, and the use of a clear quantitative method, which result in a significant correlation between motivation and speaking skill. However, the advantages in this research is the limitation of research subject, which only include 1 class. And next is hypothesis. Based on the aforesaid theoretical and empirical review, the researcher hypothesized a positive and a significant correlation between motivation and speaking skill of 7th grade students at SMP Christian Anugerah in the 2026 and 2027 academic year as follows. First, alternative hypothesis. There is a significant correlation between motivation and speaking skill of 7th grade students at SMP Christian Anugerah Denpasar in the 2026 and 2027 academic year. And the second, null hypothesis. There is no significant correlation between motivation and speaking skill of the 7th grade students at SMP Christian Anugerah Denpasar in the 2026 and 2027 academic year. And next is chapter 3, which is research method. In the research method, I will explain first about my research design. So in the study, the researcher used a quantitative research design with correlational design type. And according to Crosswell in 2012 in page 337, correlational design provides an opportunity for you to predict scores and explain the relationship among variables. Therefore, this study aims to investigate the relationship between 2 variables, independent variable and dependent variable. And next is population and sample. For the population, in this study, the researcher involved 7th grade students at SMP Christian Anugerah Denpasar in the 2026 and 2027 academic year as the research population. And for the sample, according to Frankel, Wallen, and Hune in 2012 in page 338, the minimum acceptable sample size for correlational research is 30 respondents, because smaller numbers tend to produce less accurate estimates of relationship, while numbers above 30 are more likely to produce meaningful findings. Therefore, the researcher decided to take 2 classes as the research sample. The selection was made randomly using a spinner, and the research showed that class 7B and 7C were selected as sample. And each class consists of 30 students, so that the total number of sample is 60 students, which was considered sufficiently representative and qualified as the minimum sample size for correlational research. And next is research instrument. So in collecting data, I use two instruments. It's questionnaire and speaking test. For the questionnaire, it used to measure students' motivation in learning English. It consists of 30 questions. Meanwhile, the second task was used to assess students' speaking skill through a speaking task assessment, a date from Brown 2019 in page 158. It's extensive or monologue. The researcher asked students to make a monologue in the form of 2 until 3 minutes video on the topic of self-introduction and hobbies. And next is data collection. In data collection, I use the blueprint for the questionnaire for the motivation. And there are 7 aspects and also the description from each aspect. It consists of 30 questions for the questionnaire. And for the speaking task, I use the scoring rubric adapt to Brown. I use just 3 aspects in this scoring rubric, and each aspect have 5 criteria. And next is data analysis. The first is pre-request testing. Pre-request testing is the initial stage that must be carried out before conducting hypothesis testing. This stage includes normality testing and homogeneity testing. And the second is hypothesis testing. And this study was conducted using person-product moment t-test, person's correlation that was used to determine whether there was a relationship between variable X motivation and variable Y speaking skill. Furthermore, the t-test was used to determine whether significant or not.